Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. And another heavyweight news mashup video today, starting with Dillian Whyte and a potential Tyson Fury fight, which former super middleweight champion Carl Froch believes Whyte is more deserving of than Anthony Joshua, saying on his podcast Froch on Fighting, "More people have heard of Joshua than Whyte, but Whyte would give equally as tough a fight to Fury as Joshua would. They both pose their own threats to Fury in their own ways. Who deserves the shot more? Whyte, most definitely." Carl Froch there. And some of this talk of who will face Fury first, should they get past respective opponents, Joshua with his couple of mandatories, Whyte with Alexander Povetkin in August, because the WBC has reiterated that Dillian Whyte, should he continue winning, will get his shot next against Tyson Fury if Fury beats Deontay Wilder. They have their trilogy fight yet to be scheduled. Meanwhile, in relation to the WBC, it says it will not consider ranking Jarrell Miller until he joins their clean boxing program. Miller has not been part of the WBC rankings for more than 3 years because of his failure to sign up to the voluntary program. So effectively, you don't sign up, you don't get ranked. And in Miller's case, certainly the circumstances look suspicious. He's just failed another test, and that obviously follows 3 failed tests from 2019 and earlier in his career in 2014. Mauricio Suleiman, the WBC president, says, "What can I say is that he's been out of the picture for 3 years because we did not consider him to be eligible for the rankings and because he did not enroll in the clean boxing program. When he was first ranked, we sent the documents. He had 3 months to fill 3 pieces of paper out and he failed to do so. Then somehow claimed they didn't have the papers. So we rang him again and sent the paper and he didn't submit it twice. So he has been expelled from the WBC for 3 years. And Miller publicly in 2019 spoke about not enrolling in the clean boxing program, offering an excuse that the timing for testing was inconvenient. But obviously some of his excuses do look highly suspicious given his recent failed tests. The WBA gold champion Robert Helenius is expected to face one of a number of PBC fighters in his next bout. Helenius, who claimed the gold champion status after defeating Adam Kovnatsky in an upset on March the 7th, is in line to potentially face either Kovnatsky in a rematch, which hasn't been ruled out yet. Also, Charles Martin, Andy Ruiz Jr. and Luis Ortiz are other names that are in the mix, and that's according to his manager, Robert Sundman, who's spoken to Finnish media. Sundman has also mentioned Manuel Char's name, but it seems more likely that Helenius, who has to fulfill an option that PBC has on his next fight, will likely face one of the PBC names that I mentioned earlier. And any of those names for Helenius, so we're talking Ruiz, Kovnatsky, Ortiz, and Charles Martin, they would all be decent fights. Some of those Helenius wouldn't be favoured to win, but there is a few that I think he would have a good shot in. But we'll have to see where things go from here, but it does look likely once PBC gets back underway. Helenius, who has worked with them before, even ahead of the Kovnatsky fight, there was the Gerald Washington one in 2019, likely to be on a PBC card sometime soon. The Italian heavyweight Guido Vianello is set to return to the ring on July the 21st, opponent still to be confirmed. The 7-0 prospect featured on Top Rank's first card back in June. He beat Don Hainsworth in under a round. So it'll be interesting to see who Vianello is put up against. Obviously, what's happening now with his career, he's sort of in a resume building phase, but hopefully they can start upping the level of competition. Hainsworth was just not enough chop for him to really get any meaningful work against. Vianello's manager Sam Jones has been talking up the prospect of a Sonny Konto fight in 2021. Konto, a fellow prospect at Top Rank, although Konto's management has ruled out the prospect of that at this point. And other heavyweights back in the ring soon. David Adeleye, he will be featuring on Frank Warren's first card back later this week. Opponent still TBC according to BoxRec. Adeleye currently 1-0, but he is regarded as a prospect to watch. Also this week we have Carlos Takam and Jerry Forrest. It's a headline event for a top-ranked card in Las Vegas inside their bubble cards, which they've had back for the past month or so. This for me is a relatively competitive fight. I know a lot of people just off name value are picking Carlos Takam to win, but I'm not. I'm thinking that Jerry Forrest is actually a very live dog in this fight, and I think he might outpoint Carlos Takam over 10 rounds. And the reason that I say that is Carlos Takam, and if we just do a quick tale of the tape. So Takam is now 39 years old. He's ranked number 37 in the world, 6'1.5", 80.5-inch reach. He's got a big reach, but he doesn't necessarily always use it because he does like to sort of get in close, you know, work to the body and sort of rough up his opponents, make it awkward and deliver some shots. And I know some people don't believe Takam has a lot of pop, but the guy can crack a bit, and if he hits you flush, it's going to hurt. We've seen a number of fighters who've taken shots before from Carlos Takam and haven't exactly liked, you know, what they've been hit with. But in his opponent you have Jerry Forrest, who's a relatively unknown and unheralded fighter. He's effectively been off the radar for most of the past 5 or 6 years of his career. 32 years old, number 55 in the world, 6'1", 78-inch reach. So in terms of the height and the reach, Carlos Takam a couple of inches over Jerry Forrest in reach, and it's much of a muchness for height. If anything, I think Carlos Takam, that 6'1.5" for him in terms of his height, might be a bit exaggerated. So I think when we see them, Jerry Forrest might actually end up being the slightly taller man when they're actually in the ring. But Forrest, if you caught that performance against Jermaine Franklin, he made it awkward and tricky for Franklin in 2019. He came into that fight against Franklin on an 18-win streak, and I thought he beat Franklin there. And Franklin is generally regarded, you know, somewhere between top 30 and top 50 at this point in his career. I thought the movement and the sort of the boxing display that Forrest put on, it did make Franklin look a little bit average. And one of the reasons I'm picking Forrest to get a decision over Carlos Takam is I think that he can basically make it a bit awkward and tricky for him. I have referenced before that there was the Senad Gashi performance where Carlos Takam didn't look great against Gashi, looked completely sort of, you know, at sea, wasn't able to cut off the ring. And I have had some people say, well, Gashi was running. But we can also go back to other fights. Joseph Parker effectively beat Carlos Takam when Takam was more in his prime, when he was 35. And that was essentially using the jab and using the ring. And I think Jerry Forrest will have looked at that performance, no doubt, and I think he is going to execute a similar sort of game plan. He's not going to be a static target, a stationary target in front of Takam, allowing Takam to sort of get off his shots. Think a la the Derek Chisora fight, where Carlos Takam basically was unloading on Chisora round after round, Chisora covering up, ultimately waited for Takam to gas out, and then obviously took him out. I think what we'll see is Carlos Takam looking to come out quite strong early. I think he will look to really put it on Forrest if he can. I don't think he'll respect Jerry Forrest and his power. Forrest does have a decent right hand, but not necessarily a massive punch. He's got a knockout ratio just under 70%, but I think at the top level he hasn't shown he has that sort of one-punch power to trouble any of the fighters at the upper echelon of the heavyweight division. I think that Carlos Takam will probably start to slow down rounds 4 to 5, and this is where I think Jerry Forrest is going to actually start to take over and win more rounds. So it could be quite competitive early, sort of splitting rounds, or Carlos Takam maybe winning, you know, the first 2-3 of the, you know, first 5 rounds or so. But I think Forrest will start to come into his own behind the jab, using movement, tagging Carlos Takam. So it may not necessarily be a real barn burner, and it may not necessarily be a hugely exciting fight for parts of it. But I think Jerry Forrest is going to use movement to thwart Carlos Takam and try outpoint him and get a win here. And for both these guys, it's a crossroads fight. Carlos Takam still wants to prove he is a guy that can be in some fights with name guys in the heavyweight division, whereas Jerry Forrest has never really cemented his place as someone that can be in bigger tier fights. So a lot on the line for both. But I am picking Jerry Forrest in this one. And I'm not saying he's going to win wide or anything like this. I think it's going to be relatively close and competitive. But I think the second half of the fight, if it goes that long, if Forrest can stay out of trouble, I think he will start to pick up some rounds. And I could see like a 96-94 sort of decision to him. How about you? And rounding out this heavyweight news mashup video, the unbeaten Chinese heavyweight Zhang, who's currently 20-0, has posted to Instagram that he's expecting big things in this new chapter of his career and for people to stay tuned. So it's unclear if that means he's moved on to some sort of new promotional deal or arrangement. He had been on a co-promotional deal with Matchroom, so we'll see where things go with that, but I'll play the video that he has posted to social media.
3 minutes a round, 7 days a week. Punching, punching, punching. To be the best, you have to beat the best. You have to beat